beware of a market bearing false gifts, right?
Mm,
That hasn't worked. I've had a lot of people ask me this question about the gold versus the mining stocks, and should I be buying mining stocks because they've been lagging the gold price? And my answer is always the same. Don't buy laggards just because they're lagging. That's a problem. And if you want to be long the commodity, be long the commodity. That's what I think.
you're watching Capital Cosm. My name is Danny, and today's guest is Jason Shapiro. Jason, thank you so much for coming back on Capital Cosm.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. Let's just dive right in, Jason. What is top of mind for you? What is occupying your headspace? What is top of the radar for you right now?
I mean, I think, clearly the election has shifted everything. I think essentially anything that happened pre-election is now pretty much irrelevant. We're now in it's Donald Trump's world, and we're all just living in it. So
Right.
I think it's tough to read how the market is trading relative to expectations and all that until the new administration gets in place and starts to do what they're going to do. And we can see how the markets react to that. But for now, it's just like, we're in a waiting game to me, in particular, to find any kind of signals. I mean, this administration is clearly going to be very aggressive about the things that they have been talking about. So it's a different world suddenly, right? And I usually
Right.
don't think that politics affects that much, but clearly in this case, it's going to. And so in order to get a read, we're going to have to see the things that they actually do and then see how the markets react to that. So we got a while for that. The guy doesn't even take office for 2 months. So
Yeah. But despite all that, I mean, you have seen some big moves in certain markets out there. One of which is the Bitcoin market. Bitcoin's at a little over 90,000, 91,000 at the time of this recording. What do you make of that? Well, why is Bitcoin ripping higher?
no, I mean, it's just one of these Trump trades. It's probably the biggest Trump trade, right? They said they were going to adopt Bitcoin. They said they were going to, get rid of the SEC chief who's been anti-Bitcoin, put in a pro-Bitcoin guy, and they've even talked about building a national reserve of Bitcoin. So, I mean, what are you going to say, right? We had a situation where we saw the positioning on Bitcoin had gotten quite short um, back in sort of September. And we had I'm not a chart guy, but we did have a pretty convincing chart where the thing had just been forming this flag ever since March. So breaks out of that flag, and you've got people caught short. It can plus the fundamental news. You can get a pretty big move, and that's exactly what we did.
From your analysis, how much runway does Bitcoin still have? How much runway does this crypto bull market still have that we're in?
I mean, anything that's trading on a new all-time high, right, is
Mm.
something that you want to be a part of. You know, I think if I wanted to make the contrarian play, it seems like people think that there's no way that the thing can go down now. You know? So that starts to get a little bit dangerous, but at the same time, it's not going down. So why fade it? Why get in the way of it? This is a trend, and I don't see why you need to get in the way of it at this point. You can try to be a wise guy and try and do it, but I wouldn't. Not here.
Mm. I remember you saying something similar to that effect to gold. Gold's corrected a little bit since the last time we've spoken, or actually, it may have actually gone up. The last time we spoke was a couple of months ago. But anyways, gold has made new all-time highs at $2,800. It's then corrected back down to a little over $2,600. What do you make of the gold price as well?
Yeah, I mean, all the metals started to get way too crowded, and people were getting way too excited.
Hmm.
And it continued higher even after that happened. I would argue they were getting a little bit too excited in September. And it continued higher, which you can always do. But truthfully, gold is where it was, early September. It hasn't really gone anywhere in 2 months. And the other metals are a lot worse than that. Silver's below where it was in May, despite the fact that there was this whole thing when silver sort of broke out in mid-October. Everyone was very excited about it, but the truth is the thing hasn't gone anywhere since May. Um, and the other metals are the same. Platinum has gone nowhere. Even palladium, which had this big breakout that everybody was looking at, earlier, sort of late October, has completely failed, and palladium's almost on new lows here. So,
Mm.
I'm not a big, and now the positioning is starting to come off, which is positive, but I don't think it's come off enough. So this is not my favorite trade by far. I'm not long the metals. I'm not a believer in being long the metals here.
So that includes precious metals, I'm
Well,
assuming,
yeah,
gold, silver.
all of them, gold, silver. I think we're in the process of coming off of what was way too long positioning.
I
So
see. Could you not apply that same reasoning for the crypto space as well? I mean, gold was
we didn't have super long positioning. Like I was saying,
right.
even in mid-September, we actually had pretty extensive short positioning in crypto.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
in the process of getting out of that. You know,
yeah. But if you recall back a couple months back when we were looking at gold and silver, we saw a lot of that same euphoria that's being seen now on the crypto space. How can one know whether or not sure the trend is your friend, but until it's not?
correct. So one can't know with perfect precision every single time. One can only play the odds. I tend to measure the odds based on positioning, which was the right thing to do in the metals on the, getting out of longs at the very least. It was the right thing to do in getting into Bitcoin. Where the positioning is on Bitcoin now, this data comes out every Friday. So we're going to find out on Friday. There's clearly been a huge move, since the data last came out. The data is as of Tuesday. So the data as of last Tuesday, which was pre-election, versus where the markets moved, I would be willing to bet they are no longer short.
Mm.
Where they
What
have
data is
gotten
this? What data is this?
the commitment of traders data, which shows
Uh,
the positioning in the futures market. So I would be willing to bet that they're no longer short. Where they have gotten super long, I don't know if they can go from short to super long in a week. They could do anything. But I would bet that we're probably more at a neutral point now, if nothing else, which to me, the way that I trade means that if I were long Bitcoin, I would be taking my profit here and waiting for the next trade, which doesn't
Interesting.
mean Bitcoin can't keep going up. It just means for my process, which is trying to get long things that people are super short and short things that people are super long, I would be getting, that's how I exit. I exit when if they're
Mm,
super short and I get long and they get neutral, I get out because there's no more edge there according to my process. So I will most likely think that it will be getting neutral here at the least. And I would be taking profit there and looking for where my next trade is. Um, it's either, obviously it could keep going up. It's either going to go up or down. But once it gets neutral, the risk reward is not there for me.
I see. What is attractive to you right now?
Not very much. I actually have like no trades on right now.
Mm,
I can't um, trade until I can see some kind of market confirmation of something. And I just don't know where you're getting market confirmation when the news flow and the reaction to that news flow has had such a dramatic change, in the last, whatever, 8 days. We have to get a new read on what is news flow. Like, the CPI came out today, hooray. I don't think it means anything. What does CPI looking back a month mean today when we
right.
have a completely new regime in front of us, right? So I think we got to roll into that new regime before we can really start to read the tape and how it is performing relative to what the news flow is. So there's not a lot out there. I'm looking at some of the currencies, although they are not completely there yet, but I think people are getting started to get too bearish and too short things like the euro and the Swiss and the Canadian dollar. It's the exact opposite of what we had back in late September. where people were way too bearish the dollar. And now, lo and behold, the dollar has ripped for the last 6 weeks, and now they're starting to kind of get a little bit too bullish the dollar.
Mm,
So I think there will probably be an opportunity there at some point. It's not there yet, but that's the next thing I'm looking at. I sort of like the idea of being long energies, because nobody seems to want to be long energies. But again, the positioning is going to have to get into position first, and then we're going to need some kind of market confirmation. That has not really happened yet. So it's just sit back and wait time for me.
I see. I'm looking at the 10-year right now. It's at 4.4%. So the 10-year is ripping higher. And we just had a rate cut about a week ago. What do you make of that? Why is that the case? Why the divergence there between the long end versus the short end, which is what the Fed controls?
I think that the long end, and I've done a lot of talks on this and a lot of videos on this, but I think if you're cutting rates into a world where there is clearly plenty of liquidity, that's bearish the long end,
Mm,
right? The Fed can somewhat control the short end, obviously, but they can't control the long end at all, right? And people, I think, misunderstood the yield curve coming into the rate cuts. You were getting a lot of comments like out of politicians asking Jay Powell before cut rates, when are you going to cut rates so mortgage rates can come down and people can afford houses? But him cutting rates has nothing to do with where mortgage rates are going to go, you
mm,
know, because mortgage rates aren't based off the Fed funds rate. Obviously, they're based off the 10 years or the 20 years or whatever.
right.
So I think people misunderstood that. And I personally kept saying I thought that they were crazy to be cutting rates. Not that I didn't think they would, but I thought that they were crazy. Um, and I still think they're crazy for cutting rates. And I think the most bullish things for bonds will be when they stop cutting rates. Um, but like I say, we're in a world now where these guys are really looking to, it seems to me at least, they're really looking to juice the economy in every single way that they can, right? So tough to be long bonds in that situation. The long end is more about discounting in future inflation and growth. And clearly now, they have to start to discount in more future inflation and growth based on what the proposals are that are out there.
I see. You did mention energies was one sector you could potentially have your eye on. Does that include oil? Even though it's been kind of it's been hugging this $70 support level. If you chart it out, we just looked at it with Garrett Soloway on the previous episode. I mean, this support level's been there for like 3 years now. Uh, do you are you bullish on oil? Is that included in your energy sector thesis? I guess.
It's a thought process that I would like to get bullish oil.
Mhm.
I think that if there's one place that you would have trouble pushing around, it would be the oil thing. I know the Trump administration's policies, they want to drill, baby, drill and push oil prices down. But, you know, you can't get people to drill if they can't make money, you know, on oil. So oil prices keep going down, then obviously they're not going to drill, right? So I think the contrarian play there is to look to be long, not short. Um, you're and the consensus really, and I try to trade against consensus is clear as you mentioned, your friend there that wants to be bearish oil. I think that that's a very consensus idea. So I would be looking to go the other way once the market starts to behave a little better.
I see. What other energy markets are you looking into? What about uranium? Are you do you see anything there?
I don't really trade uranium. I think that just as a fundamental play, um, I think uranium is probably a great play. I don't look at the market. I don't really look at the chart. I don't really know what it looks like. I don't really know what it's done. But I think a longer term fundamental play, uranium is probably the best play there is. But my favorite one right now is natural gas
Hmm.
of all of them. But certainly uranium, I think the future is going to be nuclear. And uranium should benefit from that, right?
Yeah. If you were to trade it though, what route would you take? Would you have like would you go through the miners? Would you go through the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust? Would it be a mixture of both? How do you kind of
I'm a
attack this?
believer if you want to be in the commodity, you be in the commodity.
Hmm,
The miners have their own issues, right? Mining is an expensive business, it's a labor intensive business, it's a capital intensive business, right? So I'm a big believer. If you like the commodity and you want to belong the commodity, then belong the commodity.
Gotcha. Well, what about natural gas? How are you expand on what you meant by opportunity on natural gas?
And again, I'm looking to get long markets that I find people are super short.
Hmm.
We have people super short natural gas right now. So it just provides the opportunity for a good risk reward trade. It doesn't necessarily mean natural gas will go up, but it means that
Right.
if it goes up, it should go up a lot more than that, than the potential risk on the trade. And I think that that's the most important thing in trading. So, yeah, I like natural gas here, and you can make the whole fundamental case too, but it trades at a big discount to European natural gas. Now Trump is, if people want to make him happy, so they're going to try and buy U.S. natural gas. I don't know how that solves the problem of transporting LNG, but um, that's kind of the fundamental case. But I'm not really trading it based on that. I'm trading it based on the idea that people are just way, way too short that stuff now.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I personally have seen some movement in my natural gas stocks over the last week, ever since the election. That may or may not be connected. It probably is, but regardless, again, same question to you when as it relates to how do you trade the natural gas trade? Do you go straight to the futures or do you look at the producers here?
I mean, I'm a futures trader,
Hmm.
so for me, it's always the futures. But if again, it goes to the same thing. I would always trade if you're bullish the commodity. I would always trade the commodity over the stocks, just because it's just like anything else. If you're right about the commodity, you want to make money based on that, right?
Hmm.
You can be right about the commodity, and for whatever reason, the stock market could go down, bringing down these other stocks. Interest rates could go up, making their costs higher, which could get people a little, selling out of those stocks. You want to be trade the thing that you're trying to capture is what I have found, right?
Yeah. There's
Um,
many points of failures otherwise.
right, which is really why I personally don't trade options like, on a directional basis because I could get the vol wrong, right? I get direct. It's happened to me before. I haven't traded options in 4, 5, 6 years, but the last time I did it, I bought a put on a stock and I was right. The stock dropped, but the vol came way in and I didn't make any money on it. So
Hmm.
I need to make money if I'm going to be right on the direction of the asset that I'm trading.
Right. Hey guys, quick pause. I won't take too much of your time, but if you're looking to add into your gold and silver stack, please consider Miles Franklin. More specifically, email them info@milesfranklin.com and tell them that Capital Cosmos sent you in the subject line to unlock special pricing that you won't find on the website. In the unlikely event that you don't like the prices, you could always not buy. There's no commitment necessary, but I do recommend Miles Franklin for a number of reasons. The customer support is top notch, the prices are great, and I know the people there. Great people all around. So, with all that said, let's get back to the video. Thanks, guys. What are some warning signs that you would look for to confirm your your thesis? Right now, it seems like you first identify something that's asymmetric, right? Like natural gas. Right now, it's been beaten up, just destroyed for a couple of years now. It's well off its highs from 2022. What other confirmatory signs do you look for to
So I
increase the
look for it to
probability?
start trading well on what is seen as bad news.
Mm,
So let there be some, bearish inventory news or something on natural gas, right? Let them
right.
tell me that, hey, the natural gas inventory this week, it'll come out tomorrow. What was the biggest inventory number that we've seen in 5 years, right? And let natural gas go down on that and then actually close up on the day.
I
I'm
see.
looking for the tape to confirm what I want to do before I do anything.
Another commodity that's been beaten up, pretty much to the same tune as natural gas has been coal. Do you have the same sentiment on coal?
I do not trade coal, and I don't really track it that much, so I wouldn't have anything really, anything even semi-intelligent to say about coal.
Okay. Any other energy plays you're looking at, or is
No, that's the main
that
one.
pretty much
Natural
it?
gas is really the main one that's actually actionable here. The other ones are just sort of a thought, at this
Right.
point.
So it appears like you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, bearish metals, that includes the precious metals.
I
Uh,
wouldn't necessarily say bearish metals. I just don't think that that's a place that I would belong here.
okay.
I'm not short, so I'm not bearish, but I just don't. I think
Short
that
metals,
if I were going to be long a commodity, I would be looking to the energies.
energies. Okay. And energy in particular, natural gas.
Correct.
That's the big one.
Correct.
So I'm looking at the markets right now. The Dow has often been known as the, I guess for lack of a better term, the dumping ground of foreign capital into the U.S. markets. Should we anticipate the Dow to begin outperforming the other markets, i.e., the S&P and the Nasdaq, should Trump's policies go through on a
Um,
relative basis?
I'm always hesitant um, to look for the Dow for leadership. I think that on a fundamental basis, that does make sense. You look at like these other markets, these other global markets since the election, really, the DAX is breaking down here. The Euro Stocks index I'm looking at is just horrible, right? Whereas, as you said, the Dow has been just ripping. So that's probably the fundamental idea, right?
Mm.
I personally don't like, I'm not gonna say I don't like, but I don't think it's a healthy thing over time for that to happen. I think it's much healthier over time for the higher beta stuff to be leading an up market, which is the Nasdaq, right? Just based on math, right? If this is more higher beta, it should lead the market, and if it's not, um,
For
that's a
for
little
those who
bit.
may not know, what is beta? What does beta mean?
It's just like it's usually based on a stock, but a stock's movement relative to the market over time. So
Mm-hmm.
if this stock tends to, over time, the market goes up 1% and this stock goes up 1.5%, its beta is 1.5. And then the market goes down 1%, the stock goes down 1 point. And obviously, this doesn't hold every single day, but over time, it's measured, right?
Right.
So it's just more volatile, essentially. So the Nasdaq is clearly more volatile than the S&P, which is more volatile than the Dow, as it should be. These are more growthy companies relative, right? Um, so in a healthy bull market, to me, the Nasdaq should be leading. Um, and
Mm.
in a bear market, the Nasdaq should be leading down to sort of
Okay.
confirm it. Um, so and it doesn't mean it's just like people like to look at breadth to do that, right? They're like, oh, in a healthy bull market, breadth should be expanding, which I don't really agree with, and I think was proven to not be the case this year. Earlier in this year, all anybody talked about was the low breadth, the low breadth, the low breadth, and then the market just kept going up, right? I don't look at breadth. I look at the relative movements between the higher beta stuff and the lower beta stuff, which again doesn't necessarily mean today, but over time, I find that the higher beta stuff should lead the market higher. And if it
Mm.
doesn't, that can be a potential problem going forward.
Isn't that how the gold market works with the miners? In a healthy gold bull market, you should expect the miners to begin outperforming the gold price, right?
I don't know if that's true. I've never looked at that. If you tell me, I will take your word for it, but I don't know if that's true.
Okay, I was just wondering. Uh, I actually want to tie this into what you said earlier in terms of asymmetry. We do see a lot of asymmetry in the mining space, in the gold miners. Uh, do you have any particular thoughts on that? I know you're not particularly bullish on the metals
What do
themselves,
you
but
mean by
more.
asymmetry?
So if you look at the miners today over time, they've been beaten down fairly definitively over like the last 10, 15 years.
I don't know why that offers asymmetry.
Well, if you track it over time, the miners had a much higher price level versus today.
Okay.
So they've
So
they've they've
they've been
been
going down.
yeah, they've been going down. They've also been going down relative to the price of gold.
I don't think that's a good sign. If
Mm.
they can't go up when the price of gold's going up, when the hell are they going to go up? That's how I would look at that personally, right? Like you think you're playing a game of like, oh, gold's gone up and these haven't gone up, so they're offering me a gift. Well, you know, beware of a market bearing false gifts, right?
Mm,
That hasn't worked. I've had a lot of people ask me this question about the gold versus the mining stocks, and should I be buying mining stocks because they've been lagging the gold price? And my answer is always the same. Don't buy laggards just because they're lagging. That's a problem. And if you want to be long the commodity, be long the commodity. That's what I think.
right.
They may have less downside than gold, given that they've gotten bashed, and you know, but I wouldn't think that they would have more upside.
Gotcha. And what would you say is probably the most contrarian view right now? I know you've alluded to natural gas, but is that your most contrarian view?
At this point, yes. I think that the most contrarian view, and I don't take political sides because it distracts from my ability to make money in the markets, which is what I'm trying to do. But I think what I said this week was the most contrarian view that I can think of is what happens if Donald Trump actually pulls all this stuff off, you
Mm,
know, ends the wars, creates economic growth without inflation, makes does all these things, and they work. Then he goes down as the greatest president that's ever lived. If he pulls all that off successfully. That's the most contrarian view
mm,
I can think of. Just based on what has been the rhetoric behind Donald Trump since he joined, politics and the whole arena of politics, right? Um, if he were to come out the other end and be declared, the greatest president that ever lived, it's just so ridiculously contrarian, I think that it just might happen, just based on that alone, right? I remember in my lifetime, I would argue that the guy known as the greatest president in my lifetime is probably Reagan, which Democrats may argue with. But the truth is, on his second election, he won 49 out of 50 states, right? So that spoke pretty loudly to how people felt about him and his administration, I would say. But when he joined, when he first became president, it was seen as a joke. He was a B actor,
mm.
you know? And look how that turned out, right? Now I would argue that there's a big argument out there that he's probably the greatest president in the last 50 years. Um, so, I always think of that movie Back to the Future when the guy's like, "Oh, if you're from 1985, well, who's the president of America in 1980?" He goes, "Ronald Reagan." He's like, "What, the actor?" Like it
Yeah.
was a joke, you know? And look what happened, you know? Despite the fact that he was super old and for probably half of his presidency was probably suffering from Alzheimer's, and his wife was running the country with her astronomer. um,
Hey,
but
but it saved him from getting shot that one time,
no, it did.
supposedly.
Right. So that's all fine. But my point being, I could just see how funny it would be, if Trump were to pull all this stuff off or even most of this stuff off. And, what would you say then? You know, what would people say then?
How would you trade that though? What would be the trade for that?
Oh, I mean, you'd have to be long all the stuff. You'd have to be long the stock market, you have to be long Bitcoin. Um, you could even arguably be long bonds in that situation,
Mm,
because the main issue with bonds here is or at least what the bears think the main issue with bonds here is the fact that we're on an unsustainable path of borrowing, you know, and that we're on an unsustainable path of deficits that are leading to borrowing. He comes out and cuts, all this spending, all this government spending, and makes it all efficient, and him and Elon Musk or whatever, and that's the other thing, people love to hate on Elon Musk, and it's fine, you have the right to, but fading Elon Musk to this point has not been a very good trade, you know, in
mm.
any way, shape, or form, right? Not to say that this one won't be a good one, but to this point, fading Elon Musk has not been a very good idea.
Would you be long or short commodities in this kind of scenario?
That's a tough one, you know. That's a tough one. I don't think commodities are the biggest beneficiary of all of that stuff. I think that stocks and Bitcoin would probably be the biggest beneficiaries to all that. As we have seen, look, we know if it's successful, that's what the market has been betting on since election, right? So it's telling you these are the trades. If Trump pulls all this off and is successful doing on this, here's the trades. Well, what are the trades that have worked during that period? It hasn't been commodities. It's been stocks. It's been Bitcoin. I think those are the ones that would benefit the most if the Trump miracle comes true.
Interesting. What is your base case though? That's the most bullish scenario, obviously. But what is the base case that you kind of see?
The base case is we just kind of go back to normal. You know what I mean? Like it's all great, and the theories are all great, I think. But is it possible, to really change Washington, D.C. that much? You know, they talk about how they want to change the FDA and how that all works, and that the food supply that we have been provided with by these food conglomerates is dirty and not healthy and it's killing us and that's probably true. But why are they able to get away with it? I would argue is because they have huge lobbying efforts, and they line the pockets of these politicians who allow them to vote their policies and allow this stuff to happen. If you want to change that, you've got to change that. So you've got to get all of these Congress people to vote your way, despite the fact that they are lining their pockets with the money from the food company. Can you really break that down institutionally? I hope so. I'm all for it. Can you really do it? I don't know. I don't know. So the base case is we probably just go on, for the most part, as we've always gone on, which again is stocks up anyway, because stocks go up over time anyway, right? So, being bearish stocks doesn't do you very well over time, right? So that's probably base case.
Gotcha. Well, I think we've covered a whole host of things here, Jason. Anything else you want to cover that we didn't get to?
Not really. I think that's pretty much everything.
All right. Well, tell us where people can find you.
Crowdedmarketreport.com would be the best place to go. That's our webpage, which will then point you to our YouTube channel where we do, a lot of YouTube videos for free and stuff. It'll point you to our Substack where we release sort of weekly reports on our Substack for free. And I'd say crowdedmarketreport.com is probably the best place to check it out if that's what you wanted to do.
All right. We'll have the link to that down below in the description box. Be sure to check it out, guys, if you're interested. If you enjoyed this content, remember to give us a like, comment down below. Go, Jason, go. If you agreed with pretty much everything we had to talk about. If you disagreed, however, leave me a comment and tell me why. I do read the comments, so I'm super interested to get your takes here, guys. And also support us on Substack, capitalcosm.substack.com. Link to that is also down below. With all that said, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, thank you so much for watching. And I'll catch you in the next episode.
All
Bye,
right,
guys.
man. Talk to you soon.